You have to uncover the lie, tell the truth, and then whosoever will, let him come to the truth and bow down. So for making trouble among the righteous, the Caucasians were rounded up and kicked out of the Holy Land. In Masonry, are there any Masons in the house? Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. Are there any Omegas in the house? Any Alphas in the house? Any Kappas in the house? Any Deltas in the house? Any AKAs in the house? Any Sigmas in the house? All of you, in order to become a brotherhood, you have to do what? You got to cross the burning sand. You got to get over in order to become a brother. That's part of your initiation. As a Mason, you're cable-toed. And you wear a little something to hide your shame. And they take you across the burning sands. You're a third-degree Mason. A master Mason. But you can't get there unless you cross the burning sand. But what you don't know is that all of those rituals have a root. And the root is the journey of the Caucasian people when they were driven out of the Holy Land, sent up into Europe. Listen. Now, when the Caucasians were sent up into Europe, and you say, well, why are you teaching this? I have to say this because there are persons in the audience who may see themselves as white. But listen, I want to teach white people how they got to be white. No. This is what God has revealed. I want to teach white people how you got to be the way you are. That you have been the bloodshedder and the hell raiser on our planet more than any other member of the human family. Why is that? There's a reason for that. Some white people don't know why they are the way they are. Why have you killed people that didn't bother you? Why have you murdered people that opened their doors to you? Why have you murdered 100 million people for every 1,000 years of your existence on the planet? Therefore, you have killed more people than your own population. So if God were to take an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth, and a life for a life, this is why doom is preached for the world of the white man. Because you have murdered all the darker people of the earth, and you have earned your destruction. This is why we ought to thank God that there's a man named Jesus. Because without Jesus, without a man telling you that you have to be born again in order to see the kingdom of heaven, without a man offering you a way out of the curse of your father, you would have no hope at all. I represent hope. I represent mercy. Hope not only for the black and the brown and the native people, but hope for the whites as well. You say, why hope for them? Since they have murdered so many on the earth, why would you offer them hope and not the destruction that God has promised? The Bible says you don't blame the clay. You blame the potter. And if the potter has shaped the clay into a rebellious nature, then they have been themselves more than we have been ourselves. So they have a hope to get out of the shape that the potter shaped them in, because they also have become potters. And you and I and we have been in their hands like pieces of clay. And they have shaped us into niggers, shaped us into coons and colored people, shines and ham bones, whores and pimps. You are shaped as a homosexual. You are shaped as a lesbian. So a potter has had you in their hands. They have us in their schools and they shape us. They have our mothers and they've shaped our mothers. You sit in front of the television all day long, being shaped by the funk and the filth of the world. You are a shaped people. They were shaped in an ugly form, and then they turned around and shaped the people of God in an ugly form. Now God comes. He said, I will break the form that they shaped you in, but I will offer them hope that I can break the form that their father shaped them in. That's the value of Jesus Christ. That's the value of the Messiah. That's the value of the Mahdi. That's the value of the presence and the coming of God. Now let's go on. When they went into the hills or were driven cable tow, 2,200 miles across the Arabian desert, we took away from them everything except the language and drove them into the hills and cave sides of Europe. EU, R-O-P-E. This prefix EU means hillsides and caves. And rope is the rope to bind in. And when they got into Europe, they lost the knowledge of themselves and fell down on their all fours and became a savage people. So when you read the history of how the Caucasian has come up from a caveman, it is a marvelous history of evolution. Those that lived in the caves of Europe, the caves were facing the north, so the sun rose in the east, came around to the south, and settled in the west. But the man who was in the cave facing north, the further back in the cave he went, the darkness and the dampness of the cave produced more hair on his body. Just like you, if you put a cast on your leg because your leg got broken or your arm got broken, with no sunlight, no vitamin D, you'll find when you take the cast off, a whole lot of hair has grown. The Caucasian went into the caves of Europe and he was befriended by the dog. So in the Holy Quran, in the 18th surah called the cave, it talks about how the people of the cave made the dog their friend. And this is why Caucasian people will say to you today that the dog is man's best friend. Lie! Lie! God is man's best friend. All praise is due to Allah. All praise is due to Allah. Now, today a dog has more value in American society than the black man or the Native American or the Hispanic. They'll stop and pick up a dog in the street, sit the dog down at the table and let the dog eat with them, but will murder you if you're found in their neighborhood in the wrong time at the wrong place. A dog has more value because they domesticated the dog, and the dog became their friend. And there they were in the caves of Europe, sometimes growing tails. I've got pictures of this. They grew little tails. And even today, some of the children are born with tails. And they operate, cut them off. But that's nothing to be ashamed of. That you came from a cave to become Lord and Master of the earth, of the sea, and of the air. But how did you get to be Lord and Master of the earth, of the sea, and of the air? You could never have done it in your condition, losing the knowledge of yourself, not able to bury your dead. Your dead would die and lay there in the cave with you, rotten and stink. You didn't know how to cook your food. You didn't know how to build. But God turned merciful and sent Moses up in the cave. And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so shall the Son of Man be lifted up. How was he lifted up? Moses went up there. The Caucasian was in terrible condition. Moses had to sleep in a ring of fire because like animals are afraid of fire, they were afraid of fire. But Moses taught them about fire. Moses taught them how to bury their dead. Moses taught them how to build a home for themselves. Moses taught them the way of God and some of the forgotten technology so that they had truth and they had tricks so that they could go on to their destiny to rule until the coming of God. They have a statue of Moses in the Congressional Library. Moses, the great emancipator. They've kissed his toe until the toe had become, the metal had worn off of it. They love Moses because without Moses, they would never have gotten up out of the cave. Moses had a job west. Moses had a job east. After he got them up, when you walking on all fours, and sometimes they tell you when you're real tired and you come home from a hard day, if you want to relax, get down on your all fours. That's not for you. White woman had no shape, all big in here. Cave woman was ugly. If she was Delilah back then, they would never have been able to trick Samson. Because she was ugly and she was funky. Damn, Moses had to teach them. Oh yeah, I'm not telling no lies now. They have come a long way, but don't you laugh. Don't you laugh because you're crawling around on your all fours like a dog today yourself. You are all out of shape and you're funky as hell. Don't tell me, just like they were done, they have done it also unto you. Moses had a hard time civilizing white people. He had to put a board in their back so they could stand upright. Because after you crawl around for 1,000 years, you're used to that, so they had to have a board. And every time he would look around, they'd snatch the board out. The board in the back also represents the law of God that will straighten you up from living a life of an animal. But every time Moses would turn his back, they would forsake the law. Because without the law, you fall down on a dead level and you become a serpent, you become a dragon, you become a beast. But when you obey God's law, He allows you to grow in uprightness and you can become a righteous person.
Dear supporters of truth, we need 2 million signatures by February 26, 2023. Let's stand together with our black leaders and demand that the Nation of Islam and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's good name be removed from all hate group listings. To sign our petition, visit change.org/hands off Farrakhan today.